9 things I don't do anymore after 60. Life after 60 can feel like a rebirth in many ways, a time to let go of unnecessary burdens and embrace a more authentic version of ourselves. Below are 9 things that many of us find we no longer do after reaching this age. Each one reflects a shift in values, and each is a step towards greater peace, happiness, and fulfillment. 1. No longer care what people think. One of the most liberating aspects of reaching 60 is no longer feeling the need to care about what others think. For much of our lives, we spend time and energy worrying about the opinions of others, whether it's about how we look, how successful we are, or how we conduct our lives. This concern often drives decisions about careers, relationships, and social appearances as we strive to meet societal expectations. But after 60, a shift occurs. The realization dawns that most people are not paying as much attention to us as we think they are. People are wrapped up in their own lives, their own challenges, and their own insecurities. The anxiety of trying to impress or fit into a mold begins to fade away. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to others, but rather recognizing that external validation is no longer necessary. There's a newfound confidence that comes with age, a sense that we no longer need to prove ourselves to anyone. This freedom allows for a more authentic way of living, where choices are based on personal happiness rather than the need to conform. Dressing comfortably rather than fashionably, saying what we really think without fearing judgment, and embracing our own unique quirks becomes a source of pride rather than embarrassment. As this realization takes hold, there's a deeper connection to self. What others think of us loses its power, and instead, we focus on what brings joy, peace, and contentment into our own lives. The energy once spent on trying to meet external expectations can now be redirected towards nurturing meaningful relationships, pursuing passions, or simply enjoying the present moment. After all, the greatest freedom comes not from the approval of others, but from living in a way that is true to ourselves. 2. No longer put up with toxic people. Throughout our lives, we often tolerate negative or toxic people out of a sense of obligation, fear of conflict, or simply the hope that things might improve. Whether it's a difficult family member, a demanding boss, or a manipulative friend, we spend a lot of emotional energy managing relationships that drain us. In earlier years, we may have felt compelled to keep these people in our lives, believing that walking away was not an option. But as the years pass, particularly after 60, the tolerance for toxic behavior dwindles. There's a growing understanding that life is too short to surround oneself with negativity. The energy once spent on trying to fix or endure difficult relationships is now recognized as wasted effort. Instead, we become more protective of our emotional health, choosing to prioritize peace of mind over the chaos that toxic individuals bring. This doesn't mean we become isolated or cut off from others. Rather, it means being more selective about the company we keep. We choose to spend time with those who are positive, supportive, and loving, rather than those who constantly bring drama, conflict, or resentment into our lives. Setting boundaries becomes an act of self-care, and letting go of toxic relationships is a way to reclaim personal peace. It's not an easy process, but after 60, the ability to say no to people who do not add value to our lives becomes easier. We begin to recognize that we are not obligated to maintain relationships that harm us, and in doing so, we make space for more genuine connections, relationships that are built on mutual respect, kindness, and care. The time and energy saved from cutting out toxicity can be invested in more fulfilling activities and people, leading to a more peaceful and enriched life. 3. No longer have unrealistic expectations of others. When we're younger, we often place high expectations on the people around us. We expect our partners to understand us without us having to explain ourselves, our friends to always be there when we need them, and our families to fulfill roles that they may not be equipped to handle. These unrealistic expectations can lead to frustration, disappointment, and sometimes resentment when people inevitably fall short. After 60, there's a realization that expecting others to meet all of our needs is both unrealistic and unfair. People are flawed just as we are, and they will not always act in ways that align with our desires. Instead of holding others to impossible standards, there's a shift towards accepting people as they are, imperfections and all. This doesn't mean settling for less in relationships, but rather understanding that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. When we let go of the need for others to be perfect, we open the door to more authentic, compassionate connections. We learn to appreciate the small gestures of kindness and support rather than focusing on what's lacking. This shift in perspective also helps alleviate feelings of disappointment. Instead of being let down when someone doesn't behave in a certain way, there's a greater sense of peace that comes with accepting people for who they are. We stop trying to change others and start appreciating them for the unique individuals they are. Relationships become more harmonious, and we become more forgiving, both of others and of ourselves. 4. No longer set complex goals. In the earlier decades of life, there's often an emphasis on setting and achieving ambitious goals. Whether it's climbing the career ladder, buying a home, raising a family, or reaching financial milestones, we spend much of our lives working towards complex long-term objectives. While this drive can be fulfilling, it can also create pressure and anxiety, as the fear of not meeting these goals looms over us. By the time we reach 60, the pressure to constantly strive for the next big achievement begins to fade. There's a shift in priorities where the focus moves from accomplishing grand external goals to finding contentment in simpler, more meaningful pursuits. The need to prove ourselves through achievements diminishes, and the desire to enjoy life in the present moment becomes more important. Instead of setting complex long-term goals, the emphasis after 60 is on living well today. The goals we set are more personal, more immediate, and more aligned with our values. These might include taking better care of our health, learning a new hobby, or spending more quality time with loved ones. These goals don't require years of planning or intense effort. They are about making each day count in ways that bring joy and fulfillment. There's a newfound appreciation for the smaller victories in life, like successfully growing a garden, enjoying a peaceful walk, or deepening a relationship. The complexity of earlier goals is replaced with a focus on what truly matters in the here and now. Living without the constant pressure of long-term objectives allows for more peace and satisfaction as we come to understand that the journey is far more important than the destination. 5. No longer try to keep busy just for the sake of it. In a society that equates busyness with productivity, many of us spend our younger years rushing from one task to the next. Whether it's balancing work, family, or social commitments, there's often a sense of pride in staying busy. Being constantly in motion makes us feel like we are achieving something, even if it leaves us feeling exhausted and disconnected from what really matters. After 60, the need to keep busy for the sake of it diminishes. There's a realization that busyness does not necessarily equate to a fulfilling life. In fact, constantly filling our days with activity can often prevent us from appreciating the simple pleasures of life. The frantic pace of earlier years gives way to a more mindful approach, where the focus is on quality rather than quantity. This doesn't mean giving up on productivity or engagement, but it does mean being more intentional about how we spend our time. Rather than filling the day with endless tasks or commitments, there's a greater appreciation for moments of rest, reflection, and enjoyment. Whether it's spending time with loved ones, engaging in a favorite hobby, or simply sitting quietly and enjoying the present moment, life after 60 is about finding balance. Slowing down allows for a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us. Instead of rushing from one thing to the next, we can savor each experience more fully. The pressure to do it all fades away, and in its place is a sense of peace that comes from living in alignment with our true values. The need for constant busyness is replaced by the desire for meaningful engagement in the things that truly matter. 6. No longer engage in unnecessary debates. Earlier in life, there's often a strong impulse to voice opinions, defend positions, and engage in debates on a wide range of topics, from politics and social issues to personal choices and philosophies. We may have felt that it was important to express our viewpoints, sometimes even going out of our way to correct others or prove a point. Debating could be seen as a form of intellectual exercise, a way to assert our identity, or even to solidify our place within a social group. But after 60, something shifts. The urge to engage in unnecessary debates begins to fade, replaced by a desire for peace and understanding, and rather than conflict and division. This doesn't mean losing passion for important issues or becoming passive in the face of injustice. Instead, it's about choosing when and where to invest emotional and mental energy. The realization sets in that not every disagreement requires a response, and not every discussion needs to become a debate. There's a newfound clarity that comes with age, the wisdom to recognize which conversations are worth having and which are not. After decades of experiencing the ups and downs of life, the desire to argue about every little thing diminishes. Instead of feeling the need to be right or to convince others of your perspective, there's a growing sense of contentment with letting people have their own opinions. The value of maintaining peace, both internally and in relationships, becomes a higher priority than winning arguments. This shift is also driven by an understanding of how futile many debates can be. Over time, it becomes clear that people are often entrenched in their beliefs, and no amount of debating is likely to change their minds. Rather than engaging in exhausting discussions that rarely lead to meaningful change, there's a choice to conserve energy for more constructive conversations. The focus shifts toward fostering understanding and connection rather than division and contention. Additionally, the realization dawns that life is too short to spend it arguing over matters that ultimately don't impact personal well-being or happiness. By choosing to disengage from unnecessary debates, there's more space for positive interactions, creative pursuits, and peaceful moments of reflection. Time spent with loved ones, hobbies, and personal growth takes precedence over conflict. This doesn't mean retreating from meaningful discourse entirely. After 60, the approach to communication becomes more thoughtful and intentional. Instead of engaging in debates that escalate into arguments, there's a preference for discussions that promote mutual understanding and respect. Listening becomes more valuable than speaking, and the goal shifts from convincing others to simply sharing ideas. Conversations are no longer about dominating or proving a point, but about learning from one another and expanding perspectives. Letting go of unnecessary debates also improves relationships, whether it's with family, friends, or acquaintances. Choosing not to engage in heated arguments fosters a more harmonious atmosphere. The focus moves from proving someone wrong to preserving the connection. Differences of opinion are accepted with grace, and the respect for others' viewpoints leads to deeper, more meaningful relationships. Ultimately, the decision to disengage from unnecessary debates brings more peace, both internally and externally. The mind is no longer preoccupied with arguments, and emotional energy is preserved for things that truly matter. After 60, there's a clearer sense of what's important and what isn't. Choosing peace over conflict becomes not only a personal choice, but a way to enrich the overall quality of life. 7. No longer strive for perfection. Perfectionism is a heavy burden that many of us carry throughout our lives. In our younger years, we often strive to be perfect in everything we do, whether it's in our careers, our relationships, or our appearance. The desire for perfection can be overwhelming, as we constantly feel like we are falling short of an unattainable ideal. After 60, There's a liberating realization that perfection is not only unattainable, but it's also unnecessary. Life is messy, people are imperfect, and that's what makes it beautiful. The pursuit of perfection often leads to stress, anxiety, and a sense of never being good enough. But with age comes the understanding that imperfection is what makes life interesting and meaningful. This doesn't mean giving up on striving for excellence or doing our best, but it does mean letting go of the unrealistic pressure to have everything be perfect. We come to embrace the flaws and imperfections in ourselves, in others, and in life itself. This acceptance allows for more peace and contentment, as we stop trying to control every aspect of our lives and start appreciating things as they are. In letting go of perfectionism, we also become more compassionate towards ourselves and others. We understand that mistakes are part of the journey and they don't define our worth. After 60, there's a greater focus on enjoying life's imperfect moments rather than constantly striving for an unattainable standard. 8. No longer worry about long-term future plans. For much of our lives, we are conditioned to worry about the future. Whether it's saving for retirement, planning for the kids' education, or making sure there's enough for a rainy day, the future always looms large. This constant focus on what's next creates an underlying anxiety. Will we be prepared? Will everything go according to plan? The what-ifs of life can sometimes feel overwhelming, and the effort to control the future often distracts us from the present. However, after reaching 60, a shift in mindset tends to happen. While planning for the future remains important, the excessive worry about things that are out of our control starts to fade. There's a deeper understanding that life is unpredictable. No matter how carefully we plan, there will always be unexpected twists, and that's just part of the journey. The realization comes that worrying about tomorrow doesn't change anything except the quality of today. As the years pass, it becomes clear that focusing too much on the long-term future can rob us of the beauty of the present moment. After 60, the perspective shifts from what will happen in 10 or 20 years to how can I make the most of today? This isn't about being careless or ignoring responsibility. It's about striking a balance. We can still make plans for the future, but the difference now is that we don't let fear of the unknown control our happiness. Letting go of excessive worry brings a sense of freedom. Instead of being consumed by thoughts of what might happen years down the road, there's a newfound ability to enjoy the here and now. Time becomes more precious, and we learn to savor the small moments, whether it's a quiet morning, time with loved ones, or simply the pleasure of doing something we enjoy. After 60, it's less about having all the answers for the future, and more about trusting that whatever comes, we will handle it when it arrives. We've faced challenges before and survived them, so we gain confidence in our ability to adapt. In this way, the future becomes less of a source of anxiety and more of a natural progression of life, something to look forward to, but not fear. By freeing ourselves from constant worry, we open up space for joy, peace, and gratitude for the present. The future no longer looms as a threat, but rather as something unknown, yet manageable. After all, life is lived in the present, and the more we embrace it, the richer our experience becomes. 9. No longer feel obligated to participate in every social activity. In earlier stages of life, many of us feel a strong sense of obligation to say yes to almost every social invitation that comes our way. There's a desire to maintain appearances, to be included, and to avoid disappointing others. Whether it's attending family gatherings, workplace events, or social engagements with friends, we often feel compelled to show up, even if it means stretching ourselves thin. The fear of missing out, or the expectation that we should always be socially available, can leave us overcommitted and drained. After 60, however, something shifts. The sense of obligation to participate in every social activity begins to wane. The realization dawns that time and energy are finite, and not every invitation requires our attendance. This doesn't mean we lose our social connections or stop enjoying time with friends and family. Rather, we become more intentional about where we invest our time and energy. The fear of missing out is replaced with the understanding that we don't have to be everywhere or do everything to feel fulfilled. We come to recognize that true fulfillment comes from deeper, more meaningful interactions, not from trying to be present at every event out of obligation. The quality of our social engagement starts to matter more than the quantity. We learn to say no without guilt, and instead prioritize the people and activities that truly bring joy and peace into our lives. This shift also brings a greater sense of freedom. There's no longer the pressure to attend events simply to please others or maintain appearances. Instead, social interactions are chosen based on how they align with our personal well-being. We become more selective, choosing to engage in activities that nurture us emotionally and spiritually rather than participating just because we feel we should. What's even more powerful is that the relationships we maintain after 60 often grow deeper and more authentic. When we are no longer overburdened by social obligations, we have more energy to devote to the connections that truly matter. We spend time with people who uplift us, who bring joy into our lives, and who understand and appreciate us for who we are. The superficial interactions that once filled our calendars become less frequent, making way for moments of genuine connection. Additionally, this newfound freedom allows us to explore solitude without fear or judgment. Spending time alone becomes a cherished aspect of life. Whether it's enjoying a quiet afternoon with a good book, taking a walk in nature, or simply reflecting on life, solitude offers a sense of peace and introspection that can be incredibly fulfilling. We no longer feel the pressure to constantly be doing or socializing in order to feel valued. By focusing on the social activities that bring true joy and meaning, we enrich our lives in ways that obligatory socializing never could. After 60, our relationships are more meaningful, our time is more precious, and our sense of self is stronger. We finally understand that life isn't about how many events we attend or how many people we know. It's about the depth of our connections and the richness of our experiences. In conclusion, life after 60 is not about giving up or slowing down. It's about living more intentionally. It's about letting go of the things that no longer serve you, the habits and mindsets that once felt necessary but now seem burdensome. These are the freedoms that come with age, the ability to live authentically, to prioritize joy and peace, and to embrace the present moment. After 60, life becomes a time of reflection, wisdom, and above all, gratitude for the richness of experience that has shaped who you are today. Thank you for watching the entire video. If you find these stories inspiring and motivating, please comment 1. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time.